So, guys, it was quite the big game on Sunday. The Eagles are now Super Bowl champions. I have a Giants fan. He would break it all down. But before we
Yep.
start all of that, I have a take that I've been Thursday night. I think Josh Allen was the right choice for MVP. And before you say anything, I'm going to give one simple fact. The V stands for valuable. Josh was the most valuable person to the success of this football team. You know, everyone likes to point to Lamar and say, oh, you know, his stats, career here, this. His value to the team is also impacted because they had one of the best running backs in the league. Josh was given he's not going to win the division. He's not going to do this. He put his team on his back and almost got to the Super Bowl. That's what MVP is.
Well, I kind of have to disagree with that. I do see that Derrick Henry is putting up video game numbers compared to, but the Bills, on the other hand, James Cook, also without question, their most valuable skill position player on their offense. So I would say both teams definitely depended on the RB1 in addition to the do-it-all quarterback, creating all these plays. I would agree that Lamar is surrounded with more talent this season than Josh Allen was. That is true. That is true. He did have a better crop of receivers. The Bills don't have a wide receiver that's as good as Zay Flowers. And James Cook, even though he was good, he was definitely high quality. He was, I would say, better half, probably around top. He was probably top 10, right, for running backs compared to Derrick Henry, who was number 2 behind Saquon Barkley if you're looking at overall running backs in the league. I think that Lamar and Henry were really like a match made in heaven, and I think that they made each other better this year. I think that the way the Ravens kind of deployed the run game in terms of you can stack the box to stop Henry up the middle, but then you got Lamar scrambling to the outside. I mean, whenever they stuck with that, they were unstoppable this season, and that is a two-man job. So I see the argument, but I still think that if you take Lamar off of this team, even with Derrick Henry, the Ravens probably don't make the playoffs. They probably narrowly miss in that crowded AFC. I think that we've seen that before. Lamar has been injured. He's missed games for the Ravens in recent seasons, and it resulted in one year they barely stuck into the playoffs. The other year totally fell apart and missed it altogether. I think that Lamar's value has been demonstrated to this team. And yes, are there, again, some better skill position players on the Ravens than the Bills that you could side by side it? But at the end of the day, the offense is built around Lamar. I think that he I think that he just, the numbers back it up that he was more productive than Josh Allen and excelled in all the areas. I think that, you line them up side by side. And I mean, there's some of those in-game intangibles and the grittiness of Josh, but I just think that Lamar losing the award was more due to voter fatigue than anything. And the fact that he's won it twice already.
I think it's like a yes and no. I was just coming from the standpoint of, how Coach of the Year is always given to the coach that, instead of giving it to the guy who does the best job coaching, it's always the unsung story. Like you guys with Dayball 2 years ago, where it was no one saw the Giants coming and doing what they did. No one saw the Vikings going 14-3 after losing JJ to the year and Sam Darnold coming in. That's the kind of logic I'm kind of getting at it with Josh. Voter fatigue or not, there's also something with the voters that we're going to get into about the Super Bowl as well. But I just don't like everyone going, oh, Mickey Mouse MVP or he didn't earn it. I still think he earned it. There is cases for both. I just think if I had the vote, I would cast it for Josh. I just don't like how on network TV you have guys basically snickering when it's like, oh, I voted for Josh and this is why. That was my big thing more.
Right.
I think it's not like, everyone's saying, well, voter fatigue could be a thing, sure, but I don't like everyone downplaying MVP. The guy won the award. He won it for a reason. Let him have his day,
Yeah, I would say, Josh definitely earned it. I just think you could make the same argument for both that, you take them off the team and they completely fall apart. And that could be said for most teams and their franchise quarterbacks. Josh, he definitely, without question, I think that it's something to be celebrated. I think that, the Bills definitely made it farther this year than people thought they were going to. It's a huge testament to how well he played. They really didn't replace Stephon Diggs after losing him. They really never found their true, WR1. Yes, Khalil Shakir, demonstrated some level of consistency this year, but never to the point where I think he became like a problem or like anywhere near an elite wide receiver. I think that that's definitely a big hole for this team going forward. And Dalton Kincaid, you look at a guy like that. I mean, I know you were talking about when you had Danny on the show, how, you know, he ended up just being a very like pedestrian average tight end. And we thought that he was going to take a step forward this year. So for the Bills to, you know, make it as far as they did, nearly get to the Super Bowl, with the talent they had around them, just kind of grinding games out. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for that. And obviously, like, you know, they really got to look at their quarterback. I mean, as far as the main reason why they were able to accomplish those things.
Speaking of quarterback, obviously we all know who won Sunday, but there's been a lot of tweets and stuff about the quarterback on the other side of the field. This comes from Mitchell Schwartz, former Kansas City lineman. Someone's going to have to explain to me how a 29-year-old's legacy is tarnished because after the best 7-year start to a career, getting closer than anyone in history to winning 3 straight Super Bowls, one bad game, basically just one bad game for basically the entire team diminishes that legacy. I don't think it diminishes his he also goes on this long thread about like all this other stuff. I'm not saying it diminishes his legacy. I'm just saying it's like when Tom lost. When the Giants beat him, everyone clowned on him. When he lost to Philadelphia, even though he threw 500 yards in that game and was the better quarterback on the field, no, I will. Yes, I'm going to stand by that take. People, and especially I think Chiefs fans, have to learn that, look, when you're not going to win all the time, when you do lose and you lose the way that they did, because let's be honest, that was 40-6. The last 2 touchdowns, that was stat padding just to make.
Right. Yep.
Soft the blow. It was softening the blow. You have to understand that there's going to be criticism. You have to understand, look, Patrick did not play well. Travis did not play well. No one on the defensive side of the football played well. When Jalen Hurts threw that interception right to Brian Cook, because let's be honest, that was a terribly thrown interception by him, you don't go 3 and out on the next drive. You don't have a ball where pressure's cracking down and you throw it open and you have the birthday boy running a pick 6 back in Cooper DeJean. You don't throw it to a wide open Zach Bond in the middle in your own zone, and the Eagles get a red zone possession right before the end of the half. So my thing with Patrick is, also say this is the GOAT conversation, because obviously for me it's a little different than everyone else. I'm not here to say that its talks are over. I'll say that online in a joking sense, and I'll agree with some Patriots fans' opinions. I just think for right now, you pump the brakes. Because like, you look at how everyone in the past, when Tom could win 3 or 4, lost the 2 to the Giants, it was, oh, he's not going to catch Montana. He's not even going to do this. I'm here to say I'll entertain the conversation again when he gets 5. He's at 3 right now, which is already incredible. There's some quarterbacks who have killed for 1. Some quarterbacks, look, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, they got, everyone's like, oh, they'll get another. None of them have even been back. Actually, Russell Wilson was back to the game, but it was kind of hilarious what happened. But you know what I mean? Ever since Russell did that, none of those 3 I just mentioned have been back to a Super Bowl. So with Patrick, it's not that he's a bad quarterback. It's just now, how, like Tom, are you going to revitalize your position? You're getting older, and we've seen what happens with running quarterbacks, Cam Newton. When you get older, you have to learn to reinvent yourself, because if you don't, you're going to get hurt, which will tarnish your career. And not tarnish in a bad way, just injuries happen. You're over the age of 30. I'm over the age of 30. Hell, my knees hurt, and I don't even do stuff on a regular basis. I'm not a professional athlete. So that's the point I want to make with Patrick, where it's, you have to learn to reinvent yourself, especially with, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to expect from Kansas City next year. I think they'll be back in the playoffs, sure. But I don't think right now you can clearly say they're this like big, bad, scary wolf that, you know, the rest of the league is going to be afraid to play.
Well, I really think if you look at the Chiefs and, you know, this, let me just say before I get into it, yes, the Eagles deserve all the credit in the world, much as it pains me to say it. They built a tremendous team. I think that the only team that roster-wise, talent-wise, stacked up on paper to the Eagles this year was the Detroit Lions. I think if you compare the rosters side by side, looking at, you know, the entire season, I would say the Lions were the best team this year. I think the injuries caught up to them on defense. I think that if you were like, you know, saying, all right, well, who's the biggest, baddest, scariest team that I wouldn't want to face on any given week, it would be them. However, the Eagles, certainly a very well-rounded team. Defense showed up big time in this game. Offensively, they are as deep as it gets, and they got, you know, Saquon Barkley's worst game of the season, and they still won in an absolute blowout. That's a huge testament to them. They deserve all their credit in the world. That being said, let's look at this Chiefs roster compared to other Chiefs teams in the Mahomes era. Isaiah Pacheco, who's been their RB1 the last couple of years, right? Injured very early in the season, and when he came back, he never looked the same. He clearly was not 100% after that injury this season, was not ready for his regular workload. Kareem Hunt, they brought him back. Okay, he runs hard. He's a tough guy. He's slow as molasses. Not a guy that was going to take over a game at any point this season. Yards per carry is evidence of that. On the receiving side of things, they spent all of last season getting Rashee Rice up to speed. He went from being like third or fourth on the depth chart week 1 of last year, working his way into being the WR1 by the time they got to the Super Bowl last year. Clearly, there was something there. He was supposed to be their guy, and he gone for the entire season, basically, right? Travis Kelce, clearly on the decline. Definitely getting older, showed his age more this year than he did last year. Had a couple big games when they needed him to, but generally speaking, most games this season, he underperformed. Xavier Worthy, again, it was kind of like the Rashee Rice thing where toward the end of the season, and he did have a big showing in the Super Bowl in garbage time, but they eventually got him there where you can look at him and say there's something there. Everybody else on that receiving corps, just patchwork, kind of dumpster diving, I would say, like looking for DeAndre Hopkins, who just retired, Juju Smith-Schuster, Noah Gray.
That was a fake report, by the way. I want to cut you off there. That was a fake report. That was a fake Schefter account with DeAndre Hopkins. Nothing's been said.
Oh, it was? Oh, never mind. Oh, I fell for it. Oh, joke's on me.
It was like Adam Scheffler or something like that.
Oh, yeah. You got to watch, man. Those letters. They'll get you one letter off, right? That's what they hook, line, and sinker. I fell for it. So either way, Hopkins was clearly washed. You saw him when he was was wide open in the Super Bowl, that one play, right, where the entire right side of the field to himself couldn't make it happen. I mean, he fell down the depth chart after they traded for him. Juju, Justin Watson, Noah Gray, list goes on and on. This is not the receiving core of a Super Bowl team, but because it's Patrick Mahomes, they found a way to make it work throughout the year and get them to that point. Because when you have the head coach and when you have the quarterback, you can cover for those weaknesses. And it's a testament to that they even got here in the first place. Because much like I was saying, I thought the Lions were the best team overall in the NFL. I didn't think the Chiefs were the best team in the AFC necessarily this year. I wouldn't say that they were the scariest. It was just kind of like, well, they're the Chiefs. They're going to figure it out. And until you beat them, they're king of the hill. And eventually, I mean, because really, if you stack these rosters up side by side, this blowout kind of makes a lot of sense. But I do think that Chiefs are going to retool. I think that, you got to get fresher legs at running back, somebody to challenge Pacheco after this season. Obviously, Hunt is not a long-term solution at all. I think receiving-wise, you've got to, look into hey, is Noah Gray going to be Kelsey's heir, or do you need to go get another tight end? I think you need to get a traditional WR1, a big-bodied guy that can win the contested catches down the field, got some size to him. I think Xavier Worthy is extremely talented, but you need somebody with a more traditional build to complement him. I don't think he can be the only guy out there. And of course, after this Super Bowl, how can you look at anything except the offensive line? I mean, it was a stampede every time the ball was snapped. Mahomes had no time in the pocket at all. It collapsed instantly. Obviously you've got to retool in that regard. So I think that the Chiefs, they'll be back. I think that this, Mahomes maybe statistically had one of his weaker seasons, but I think that he did the best he could. I don't think that he played like it was his fault that he was holding the team back. I think that this is just a roster that needs to be improved on the offensive side of the ball. And they're, if they're smart, they'll find ways to do that. I have faith that they're going to.
So I'm just looking up some stuff right now with the Chiefs just to put it into perspective. Travis Kelce, I'm going to go through first. I'm going to read you off his yards per game. He had 34 against Baltimore. He had 5 against Cincinnati, 30 against Atlanta. And I'm just going to keep reading numbers. 89, 70, 17, 90, 100, 64, 8, 62, 68, 45, 27, 30, 84, 117, 19, and 39. He only had 2 games over 100 yards. I know for tight ends, that's something else.
How many games did he even have over 70? That's the thing.
Over 70, he had 1.
Not many. And usually it was most.
6. He played in 20 football games, and just over a quarter of them, he was over 70 yards. I was always and also a lot of this you said too, Big Bat brought up in the preseason, Kansas City, where last year when they were on their way to the back-to-back, everyone was like, oh, the problems will fix itself. It's fine. So everyone had that same sort of stuff this year when they were winning all those close games where it's the Chiefs. They'll figure it out. They'll be fine. The one thing I'll say now when you're talking about like certain players, did you know Patrick Mahomes' cap hit for next year is $66 million?
I'm sorry, you got a little glitched out there.
Patrick Mahomes' cap hit going into next season is $66 million.
66. Yeah. Yep. You're at the stage now where you got to pay your quarterback.
Chris Jones is $34 million. Jawan Taylor's $27 million. Joe Thuney is $26 million, and Travis Kelce is $19 million. With Patrick though, they can restructure. It says here is up to 12, and then Joe Thuney is 7, Travis Kelce's 2, and Jawan Taylor is 2.6. Which for Jawan Taylor, that's a bit of a problem because we all know Jawan Taylor can't play. But I'm not trying to like knock on them or anything like that. But with Kansas City, this is the part of your dynasty where you really have. That's why I say reinvent yourself, because look what Tom did for you. And everyone's saying, oh, he's so underpaid. He's so this and that. He did it for a reason. One, because he was kind of coerced into doing it. But two, he knew at the end of the day, hey, it sucks, but it's for the betterment of the team. So Kansas City right now, they're in that really tough spot where quarterbacks are getting paid. Patrick deserves the money. But you got to realize, hey, Patrick, we're going to keep paying you all this money, but it means we can't go out and get this player. We can't do X. We can't do Y, because they have a lot of contracts on the defensive side of the football that they got to pay for. Nick Bolton, free agent. Leo Chenal's due for a new contract. George Karlaftis is due for a new contract. Trent McDuffie's due for a new contract. Joe Thuney, I think, can also get an extension now. And then you have Trey Smith, who's a free agent. Wide receiver two, another name you forgot to mention as well, is Hollywood Brown, who I feel like more than likely probably will. Someone's going to probably get coerced into paying him more than he should, kind of like what the Patriots did with Juju a couple of years ago. So with Kansas City right now, they're really in a state of where do we go from here? Because I'll say this right now, if Travis Kelce retires, if you can't fix the offensive line properly, and Patrick plays the way he did this year, well, I don't know how lucky they're going to get again, because here's the thing too with Kansas City. Had they had won on Sunday, everything that happened in the season, no one would give a crap about. Isaiah Likely's foot, the block against Denver, the Black Friday full snap, but they lost, all that past trauma gets brought back up. And the other thing with Philadelphia too that I want to bring up that was their defense did that was very similar to what your defense did in the Super Bowl. We had it on record that Michael Strahan said they weren't afraid of Tom. They were not. Him, I'm not going to say his name, but was Justin Tuck on that team?
Justin Tuck was a rookie on that team, yeah. He was, he would have been number 3 on the depth chart for defensive end.
Yep. So, but you know what I mean? Like, there's all those guys on that team who basically bought into this. We're not afraid. We're going to hold the best offense in football to 14 points to again give our quarterback the chance to go out there and win it, and that happened. But the question I want to flip to you is, because Jalen Hurts won MVP, and a lot of people are saying, oh, like my opinion was Josh Sweat, Cooper DeJean, because I'm like, defense won them the game. If you could go back in time, or I want to ask this right now, do you think with the Giants, it's the same sort of thing where Eli was the right choice for MVP, or do you think it should have been a defensive player in both cases? Because at the end of the day, the defense gave the team the best chance. Basically, the defense was like, okay, we're going to let them do nothing. You can go out there and just finish them off.
Well, here's the thing, is that the reason that I think, Eli clearly deserved MVP in those games was because although the defense showed up in both of those Patriots Super Bowls big time,
he made the play when it mattered most.
What's that?
He made the play when it mattered most.
Made the play when it mattered most, and also it was a very tight game. Like it was a close. Both of those Super Bowls were extremely close games that relied on the late game heroics. And you could be like, "Oh, you're skipping to the end," but really, those Super Bowls were both defined by the fourth quarters. I mean, those were the most important parts of the game. And I think when it comes to the Super Bowl MVP, I mean, like it can, when you're saying most. Well, most can be by a little or by a lot. So I think in those cases, it was definitely entire team effort and everything like that. Defense set the tone. Eli needed to, deliver on those critical drives, those game-winning drives, essentially do what Tom Brady is known for doing. Now, in this game, I would say it's different because it was a blowout. However, because of the way things shook out, because the wealth was kind of spread a little thin, Cooper DeJean making him, he gets a pick six. Zach Bond gets an interception. The pass rush is making life a living hell. Maybe Cooper DeJean, because you got to give some credit for locking those, keeping that, keeping the secondary locked down. Nothing was open for Mahomes really all day until the end. I think he would have had a case, but then you look at the body of work by the end of the game. Like, Hurts was the leading rusher. He had a touchdown. He threw 2 touchdowns to Devonta and AJ. I can't look at Hurts and say, yeah, Hurts put the team on his back and they won this game because of him. I think that he had a fine game. He was fine. Other than the interception, the boneheaded interception that ended up not mattering at all, he was like par for the course. He just, he had a solid day, I thought. But cumulatively, when you look at the end of the game, you're like, well, we attribute all these touchdowns to him. He was responsible for that. And it's hard to cherry pick a singular player on the defense that you would award it to. Maybe it could have been Cooper. But I think that there was enough there to give it to Hurts, even though because it was a blowout, you would say the Philadelphia defense collectively was the most valuable part of that game.
I think if Cooper had like 2 picks, or I think it was Josh Sweat had 2.5 sacks, but if that was a 3rd sack, then I think you make the very strong case that, hey, they could have done it. No, I just want to ask the Eli one just because I was genuinely curious. More 42, more 46. I was all him. We all know that. But no, 42. I was just genuinely curious because of the defense of the Giants playing such a significant role in that game. Also featured former Raiders coach Antonio Pierce is a name I just randomly remembered. The big thing with the Eagles too, and I'll say this now, and it goes to Kansas City because you're saying, oh, they shut down Saquon. Before the game, I saw a TikTok about someone basically talking about one of the Bills Super Bowls, which I think this is what the Chiefs should have done. Let Saquon be Saquon. Shut down everyone else. Don't let Dallas Goedert get open in space. Don't let AJ Brown do the same thing. Don't hit Jahan Dotson downfield for a 30-yard gain. That's where I think Kansas City should have focused on. Because if you look at what the Bills did, in the AFC Championship game, the Bills took Travis Kelce completely. He only 2 catches for 19 yards, but the rest of the team still did their thing. Hollywood Brown had a game. Juju Smith-Schuster had a game. Kareem Hunt had a game in the AFC Championship. Basically saying you take away their best player. Oh, but look, boom, 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 boom. That's what the Chiefs did, and that's what I'm saying. The Eagles basically were like, okay, cool. They're taking away Saquon, opened up the field for everyone else. Trent McDuffie, one of the best corners in the league, was getting burnt constantly by AJ Brown. And then there was also the penalty too. But look, the makeup. I don't know what's worse, the penalty or the very obvious makeup call. It's like, okay, we know what you're doing. We all know you screwed up. You're hearing it from Park Avenue. Just move on with it. That's my sense on there. With the Eagles, though, the main thing that I loved was the fact that there was no blitz. That they just said, we're going to send 4, we're going to kill you, and you're going to have to deal with it for 60 minutes. Because I'm like, when the game was like 10-0, and Nick Wright had that tweet, where it was like, oh, the game can start now. And I'm like, okay, cool. But then DeJean has the pick 6. And then 24-0. I thought the game was still in grabs until they hit that kill shot touchdown to Devontae Smith. As soon as that happened, which, fun fact, first ever touchdown caught by an Alabama football player in a Super Bowl. But as soon as that kill shot happened, that's where I'm like, okay, this game's over. It's like your neck of the woods, Super Bowl 48. Ironically, this is episode 348, where the Seahawks and the Broncos are playing. You remember that game well?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Super Bowl 48. Do you remember the game well? The one where the Broncos got killed.
Yep, that was the main topic of discussion the entire Super Bowl party.
Well, I'm bringing up that game because I remember in the coming out of halftime, it was 22-0, and I'm like, hey, if Denver can put some stuff together, maybe they can make a game out of this. And then Percy Harvin ran back to the house, and I'm like, oh, this is over. Like it's It's that similar moment. Like when Jalen Hurts, when they just said, hey, we're going for the kill shot here. I'm like, okay, they hit the kill shot. It's over. It's done. Boom. Like that was the big thing about that. I just wanted to compare the two where it was just like, basically they did what the Falcons tried to do because when it was 24-0, I'm like, we've seen crazier shit happen in the Super Bowl before. We've seen a 28-3 comeback. If Patrick can do 24-0, it just raises the stakes even higher. The only other thing I'll say too is because I've seen Bills fans on basically saying like, "Oh, it could have been us." The Bills don't win, but I don't think it's a 40-22. I think it's like a 34-20 or something like that, where it's like in reach, but it's never really close. Where
no, I think that really it goes back to, and I mean, I'm going to stay on this Ravens
their offensive
thing.
fly.
Yeah, I think that the Ravens would have had the best chance of beating this Eagles team because of the pressure generated by that Eagles defense. Again, you look at Mahomes, traditional pocket passer with a little bit of mobility to him. They really standard dropbacks the entire game and he's getting swarmed compared to if it was versus the Ravens where you've got like Lamar design running to the outside. That's a way to where it's like, oh, okay, we're going to have to send an extra man after him. Oh, but that's going to open something up downfield. Completely changes the dynamic of how the defense would have, approached this game. And I think that you really, that was really, I think, the way to potentially get an edge on the Eagles this year is if you got a quarterback that can escape the heat because Mahomes was a sitting duck back there.
Yeah, that's the thing. The thing with Buffalo as well is I say about Buffalo because their offensive line, I think, could have held up a little bit better. They do have some really good talent on that offensive line, but Casey's flaws were exploited to the point where it's like they really got to do their homework this offseason. I don't think you can just roll in anymore and say, hey, we have 15, you may have 87, and we go from there. I also don't think, too, losing Orlando Brown Jr. kills them. Losing Travis Kelce will kill them. I'm not saying that to be polite, and I've always said this to Mahomes, too. I'm like, what does Mahomes look like without 87 out there? Because 87 is his security blanket. I'll also say this, too, with him, where I know everyone's like, because apparently he said earlier in the week, oh, I'm still good to play. I'm still good to play, which you're going to say. You're never going to give your hand to, oh, yeah, I'm retiring. I'm done. I don't know. Because if you do, that speculation will heat up. Apparently, it started coming in Sunday morning because apparently he was very emotional in his, they do those, which I love this, but I also find it interesting. NFL teams will stay, even if they're at home, they'll stay at a hotel the night before game. Obviously, Super Bowl's different. Like, you know how it's like the Giants where it's like, hey, they're playing in East Rutherford, but we're going to go stay at a hotel near MetLife Stadium Saturday night. And just, it's the team, it's everyone else, kind of like other sports where, hey, yeah, I just show up to the stadium when I want. Right. But apparently in that speech, he was getting very emotional, which kind of led people to think, hey, it may be it. Because last year it was, oh, could this be it for Andy Reid? And for everyone saying, hey, those reports got debunked. Andy Reid, I think, will be back in 25. But I still think there's that whole year-to-year thing with him just because of age. Sorry, I'm fighting through this. I'm just in the battle with a bit of a cold right now. So if you folks wondering why I'm sounding funny, it's because of that. But I'm doing this because I love you and I love the sport. But that's where I'm thinking with Travis Kelce, where it's starting to come in, where I think at this point, it wouldn't be shocked. But also, too, what else do you have to prove if you're him? You have a podcast that you're making millions of dollars from. You have the world's most famous girlfriend. And you have a first ballot Hall of Fame NFL career. Which I will say this with Eli, because I started seeing this more and more after it was announced, after the Hall of Fame class was announced. No one will remember when your name was called after your name is called. Look at Antonio Gates. He should have been first ballot Hall of Famer too. He's getting in this year. No one's going to look at it and go, oh, he wasn't in the first ballot. You're in Canton. Who cares? Eli's going to get into Canton. I know there's all this stuff about like this, and that. I know there is. I know, too, there's a lot of people in there where it's like, oh, the NFL is dumb. Guys, the NFL has nothing to do with who votes for the awards and who gets in the Hall of Fame. Who votes for the award is the media press of the NFL. No one from the NFL Network. I didn't even realize this until the voter list came out. Did you know there's no one from the NFL Network that's on the AP voter list? Not people that work for FanDuel vote. People that work for ESPN, NBC, CBS, Fox. Tom Brady has a vote. And then with the Hall of Fame, it's a collection which, fun fact, I don't know if he's still with AEW or not, but Alex Marvez once had a Hall of Fame vote. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah, I think I remember hearing that.
Yeah, but it's basically a list of former players who are in well established reporters that have been doing this for 25, 30, 35 plus years. That's who's voting for the Hall of Fame. It's basically the ultimate. You know, when you ever have a football debate, there's that expression 50 drunks in a bar. That's what the Hall of Fame
That's the Hall of Fame committee, yeah.
it's the ultimate version of that, where it's just these people in a room talking about who should get in and why. Which this year's class, I don't have a problem with it at all. Sterling Sharp, I think, is well deserved. Brother of Shannon Sharp. I didn't realize his career was cut short due to a neck injury. Allen too. I'll say as well, Jared Allen. I think very, very, very good, very great career, obviously. And then, like I said, Antonio Gates, someone who I had as a first ballot for next year, for last year, got in this year. To which now the next few classes going forward are going to be fun, but they're also going to suck because I'm realizing I'm getting older because everyone I grew up watching is now going to Canton.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would have, in addition to the obvious Eli stuff, I mean, I definitely would have liked to have seen Terrell Suggs get in. I mean, one of the best pass rushers in NFL history. I mean, I think that, like, if that's a first ballot Hall of Famer if I've ever seen one. So beyond, and then, you know, add on the obvious Eli criticism. But yeah, to your point, no one is going to care, you know, when your number is called, as long as if it's called. And obviously Eli is going to get in at some point. I mean, I still maintain that, you know, outside of the 2 Super Bowls, that the longevity of his career is something that few quarterbacks are able to claim. And, you know, because it's not easy to play quarterback in this league for as long as he did. I mean, we see guys getting injured. Like, this guy played through some injuries and really never missed time. Pretty much never missed time his entire career. And you look at these quarterbacks that are going down left and right. We see it all the time where, like, you know, a few weeks into the year, you're like, oh my gosh, you know, who's fantasy? Raise your hand for fantasy football teams in shambles, you know, and like Eli, for as long as he did, as effective as he was, I think that Eli is over criticized because he happened to play in the same era as Tom and Peyton, which, yeah, they, you know, that's the 1 and 2 for some people. It's certainly the top 5, I think. So yeah, makes it a harder comparison. I think people are
throw Drew in there too.
Throw Drew in there. You know, he played in an amazing era for quarterbacks, and I think that while he himself was not amazing in terms of the raw skill set, his career was amazing. And I think that you look at, you know, there's some careers that are, you know, you look at the person like that person is, you know, from a like skill standpoint, look at the numbers, look at, like, you know, he's playing like it's a video game. That is like the most efficient person to ever play the position. And then you look at the achievement and you're like, wow, look at all that he accomplished. And as we know, you know, quarterback is reflected by how the entire team performs as well. And, you know, I think that there's those intangibles in terms of, like, you know, we've seen a lot of guys do it. I mean, again, like, you know, look at Josh Allen this year. Like, you know, you just made the case for him winning MVP over Lamar, even though statistically Lamar beat him in pretty much every category, because the quarterback position, it goes beyond the numbers a lot of the time. And I mean, there's no question that Eli had a Hall of Fame career. I mean, like, you know, the first ballot, I think, is, you know, I guess to be debated for some, but, you know, he's going to get in, and ultimately after he does, this subject will be put to rest.
Exactly. Like, no one's going to remember it. It's like now with baseball too. Like, I remember when Derek Jeter got in, people were fuming because he wasn't 100% unanimous getting into the Hall of Fame. It's such a glass half empty perspective to look at, where it's, oh, he didn't get in this time. It doesn't mean that he's not ever going to get in. Sure, there's a 5-year window after you retire, but I know there's a window like from when you're eligible to get in. I don't know how long it is. I think it's at least another 5 or 6 years. But in that window, he is going to get in. But as we're seeing now, every year once the Hall of Fame, it's like every year with anything. Super Bowl ends this year. Guess what? Super Bowl odds for next year are already out. Hall of Fame class got announced Thursday night. Like an hour later, not even, you were seeing who's up next year, who's due eligible next year, and the list is insane. You have Jason Witten on there. You have Larry Fitzgerald. You have Frank Gore. You have Drew Brees, Marquise Pouncey, just to name a few. You have an era from the 2000s to 2010 of some amazing football players that he was a part of. I'm even going to throw Philip Rivers' name in there too. And I know, what did Rivers accomplish as well? It's the same sort of logic with Eli, same draft class, but we're playing in the same era with amazing football. Matt Ryan's name's going to get tossed around there a lot too. Someone who's playing who we're going to talk about, but I think when he retires, he is lock, is Matt Stafford. He played for a very shit organization at the time for the Detroit Lions, left, won a Super Bowl, and you know what? That Super Bowl is going to get him in. Matt Ryan has an MVP. I think he would be a for sure thing if he had won that Super Bowl against the Patriots. History happened. He didn't. So that's where he might be in that Eli conversation as well, where it's, hey, he's going to get in. He's just got to wait his turn. Like we just said, Antonio Gates was a top 5 tight end of all time. If you go look at some of his numbers are incredible.
Right.
He had to wait a year. You know, like we're talking with Sterling Sharp, Shannon's brother, which first ever set of brothers to be in the Hall of Fame. I think that's really cool. But, so it's just one of those things where I saw Giants fans fuming where it's like, it's a disgrace, this. It's like, guys, when the time is right, the time is right. It's like anything in life, It's like how this I loved how everyone's comparing this like Super Bowl 57 and Sunday to Rowan and Cody. How everyone wanted the Eagles 2 years ago. Eagles didn't get the win. This year around, the Eagles finished their story. And you know what? They got the job done. So that's what I'm saying. Stories are meant to be finished. Just because this has happened, this is a roadblock. It's going to happen. I don't know when, but it's like everyone. There's people on that list that I just said for next year that he goes on past names I said that aren't going to get in next year. Like with me with the Patriots, I'm waiting for Adam Vinatieri to get his name called. I'm desperately waiting for Rodney Harrison to make a finalists list. Robert Kraft as well. I don't know what the Hall of Fame has against the New England Patriots right now, but you don't see a lot of this vitriol that we saw from Giants fans where it was like, I think a lot of it was expecting it to happen, and when it doesn't happen or it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to, it's just pain disguised as anger. So that's where I think it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. You're right. It's to be, with the varied opinions of sports media and everything like that. I mean, it's so hard to be unanimous. It's so hard to get in first crack. And yeah, I think pain disguised as anger is a good way of putting it. But I also think that it's like, again, a little like you take a step back, you're like, it is going to happen. And that's the important thing to keep in mind because obviously, it is going to happen. And I think just being able to say, oh, he got in first crack is some kind of validation. I get all of the things that have been said about Eli over the years. Again, like not to rehash into it, but it really brought me back to is he elite? If it wasn't for those Super Bowls, it's like, well, those Super Bowls do count a great deal. So I mean, it's all part of NFL history, and a lot of subjective opinions out there, and I mean, it is pretty cool that all the guys that we grew up watching are now getting to that point where it's their time to go in the Hall, and it's I think it's good year by year. Don't blow your load all at once, right? I mean, that gives us our next 5 to 10 years worth of material, just kind of remembering all the guys that we watched back in middle school and high school.
Exactly, or even going back younger, like Philip Rivers was drafted and Eli were drafted when I was 10 years old. So I'm just looking right now as well, which just with the thing as well. Oh, also the Sterling Sharp and Shannon Sharp thing. They're the first brothers elected, but there's 3 father-son tandems that are in the Hall of Fame right now. Ed and Steve Sable, Art Rooney Sr. and Dan Rooney. The ones are Tim Mara and Wellington Mara. So fun fact there for Giants fans. I just looked up because I was just curious to see if anyone from this year was first year eligible. I just know Sterling Sharp was the only senior candidate to make it because I guess he's been eligible for so long. And then Jared Allen and Antonio Gates are the most recent retirees to make it because I know Eric Allen also played in the 90s as well. Little game time I want to play with you because I saw a TikTok about it today. Not picking your own team, and I'm not going to do the same. But if there is a team right now in the NFL that you look at and saying they could be a team next year that I would be not in fear of, but be careful be careful on what you say about them because it might come back to bite you later on. Like, I don't want to come out here 2 days after the Super Bowl and say, hey, in 300, how many days is it? 300, and it's the 11th. So in 362 days, who's going to be in Santa Clara that no one expects? And it's like, this team. No, I don't want to say that now because that's stupid. We say that once the draft happens. But if you think there's a team right now that you look at where if you're like, hey, they make the right moves, they make the right call, they're a team to watch out for. Who's a team that you have in mind? Barring the rules, I can't say the Patriots and you can't say the Giants.
Yeah, I think that it's goes back to the Lions, honestly. I mean, I really think that that defense getting injured and falling apart down the stretch really and then getting upset by the Commanders really undersold what was an unbelievable season. I mean, I think that I look at a team that it looked like it was out of a video game from them every single week. And I think if they were fully healthy, Aiden Hutchinson going down and starting kind of the downfall of that defense is what really did them in the end. And I think that if you run this squad back, healthy and everything next year, this team is just so deep, and they should scare the hell out of anybody who plays them. Offensively, they can beat you in so many different ways. As long as Jared Goff protects the football, doesn't turn it over. I mean, you saw like Jameson Williams made so much progress this year in terms of emerging as a true like WR2 compared to just kind of like that, one trick pony, like MVS type he was during his first year or two in the league. And you look at the running back tandem is unbelievable. Jahmyr Gibbs was even better this year than he was last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, the list goes on, and they protect up front. So the Lions really have it all, I think. I also think the Ravens window is still open as long as Derrick Henry's on the team, although they really got to watch out for that, though, because as we've seen with running backs, when you get over 30, the drop-off can come very suddenly. So Derrick Henry doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. I mean, he does take unbelievable care of himself. The amount of money that he invests just into his body and the nutrition, the IVs, the training and everything. He definitely is doing his best to defy father time, but he is still a running back at a historically young position. But I would say number one overall, if I got to pick, my team for next year, it's got to be the Lions.
So I was going more for like the kind of the dark horse angle, like on
Dark
my end.
horse?
That's what
Oh,
I was looking.
okay.
I was just saying, I'm looking at my end. I'm not going to say this team is dark horse. If I had a Lions comparison to give you, I'm going to go with another cap, but I'm going to stay in the AFC. I'm going to go with Cincinnati. I don't see them missing the playoffs for a third year in a row. I know everyone's going to say, oh, they got off such a terrible start. They also had like the opposite of like what Kansas City had. They had the bad luck where it was just the 2 losses to Baltimore could have gone their way. The loss to New England just couldn't get anything going for some weird reason. Kansas City did the pass interference call that may or may not should have been called. I just don't think that this team is going to miss the playoffs with the talent that they have for a third straight season. I'm not here to say they're going to run the division. I still think the division goes through Baltimore, but I do think they will be a wild card. They easily can be a wild card team in 2025. On the NFC side, one team, I'm not saying that this is like a Super Bowl contender. Seattle wasn't even that good, and they won 10 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to say this. If Mike McDonald can get his proper paws on that defense, that division's in flux right now. We don't know what's going on with the Rams. They're in a bit of an identity crisis, I would call it, trying to figure out who's going to be your quarterback if the Stafford thing happens, which we'll talk about the giant rumors. San Francisco, I think they'll be healthy, but Brock Purdy's wanting a contract. They want to get that done. And then Arizona, I have a soft spot for, but they do this thing every year where they look good, but then when you think they look good is when they let you down. Like, you let the Carolina Panthers eliminate you from the playoffs. And Carolina's a team I'm starting to, get that soft spot for because what Bryce went through last season and bouncing the way he bounced back. So my ultimate answer is, so that's my thing with the NFC West. I like what you say with Baltimore, though, just because I don't even think Baltimore has to make a move. I think it's just you got to keep playing the way you're playing, and you have to kind of get out of status quo, not just bring the same team back. You got to keep just building up and building up and building up, and getting better and better and better. Meanwhile, Detroit, I do agree with you. The only thing I'll say is, though, I don't think they're going to go 15-2 again. And that's not me saying, they're going to be terrible.
That's very hard to repeat. Yes.
Yeah. Well, 12-5 or 13-4, I think is very attainable. I'm saying, they're going to lose 2 to 3 games last year that they won. That's not me going, they're going to suck. It's like the Vikings. The Vikings aren't going 14-3 again. The Kansas City Chiefs aren't going to go 15-2. I mean, they may, But I think that some of these games that it's like the look of the ball. Hell, look in 2022 when the Colts went 5-12 and had a 33-0 lead over the Vikings. Meanwhile, the Vikings had an unreal season that year, and the next year kind of just all crumbled. So that's where I'm getting at with some of the angles. But I do like what you're saying. Because I would say my team, but I'll be honest with you, when it comes to the Patriots right now, more than anything, it's more of a why not us mentality, even though I still think this team is a year or two away from truly being back in playoff contention.
Sure. Yeah, I think that if you're talking about dark horse underdogs to watch out for next year, I mean, it's crazy that you're putting the Niners are in this category all of a sudden, but I kind of have to go with them. I think that they're going to bounce back next year, and I think that when they rid themselves of Deebo Samuel, I think that it's going to kind of give them an opportunity to retool the offense a little bit and kind of have a little bit of clarity, assuming that everybody else can stay healthy. I think that you've really got something there with Ricky Pearsall to take over as a number 2 wide receiver. You signed up Ayuk, so if he comes back healthy, still got George Kittle, CMC. Hey, we know that he had an injury history coming into this team, and it was a matter of time before that happened. But at the end of the day, he is still Christian McCaffrey if healthy, and I like that team to bounce back next year. I think the Rams.
I'm going to cut you off for a second. I'm going to let you vent about the Niners. I'm going to be back in 1 second because I have a prop. Yeah. It's a prop. Trust me.
Alrighty. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Niners will. I believe that they are going to take the. There you go. There he is. Madden curse. Yeah. So they had that happen to them, and now next year is their redemption. They are going to reclaim the NFC West. They're going to go back to the playoffs. I think that the Rams are going to rip the Band-Aid off with Matt Stafford and cut him loose. I think that they're going to look at trying to find their quarterback of the future. And yeah, I mean, I think that the Rams they had a good team, but I really think how much longer can you keep running it back with Stafford at this point? I think that you're just kind of chasing former greatness at this point, and you found your new guys to build around with Puka and Kyron, and I think that you need to go maybe get a little bit younger at the quarterback position and find out who's really going to be our guy for the next 10 to 15 years. And this may present itself with an opportunity to if they're able to get something decent in return for Stafford. I mean, it's not the Rams style to build through the draft really at all, but I could see them kind of moving in that direction, thinking all right, well, Stafford isn't getting any younger, and neither is Cooper Kupp. Maybe this is time when we need to reset a little bit. And I could see that happening. And even if they do run it back with Stafford, I think that the Niners are going to be the better team next year. So that's my NFC pick for underdog. And on the AFC side for underdog, yeah, this is it's a tougher one for sure. I mean, I think you got to go with the Bengals though. I agree. I mean, I think that Joe Burrow was just, with him being that good and not being able to, this team not being able to put together enough wins to make the playoffs, I just feel like he's going to find a way. They're going to get over that hump, at least enough to make the playoffs next year. I mean, I think that, yeah, the defense was a sieve for sure, but that offense is just too good. I mean, we'll see what happens as far as I think everybody expects T. Higgins to leave because he's going to get WR1 money somewhere. If you have Jamar Chase, you can't really justify paying him an assload of money. They're probably going to, if I'm the Bengals, probably looking in the draft for their guy. And the nice thing about having a crappy season is that you're going to get a decent draft pick. And, maybe Emeka Ibuka, that type of guy in the middle of the first, maybe look at a guy like that. I mean, maybe a wide receiver is not their top priority, but when you got a guy that's as good as Burrow, he's going to make, find dudes to, make these plays happen with. He's going to find somebody open. And I think that the Bengals are going to, return to the postseason next year. I think that they're going to leapfrog the Steelers because I think the Steelers fizzled out near the end of last year. And I think talent-wise, it really became apparent down the stretch that they really weren't good enough to hang with the top dogs. I think that Cincy leapfrogs them.
I do think the Steelers are in a Cowboy-esque territory. They won't publicly admit it, though, where we can sell our fans on, hey, we're going to be a playoff team or battling for a playoff team every year constantly. So you'll still show up when it's freezing cold in December. We'll still be that, hey, we're going to sell you on the fact that we can be a Super Bowl contender when we're really not a Super Bowl contender. To which, do they add Aaron Rodgers? Which I'm sorry, but I would rather have Justin Fields be my starter at this point because we saw what Justin was capable of. Which I love seeing when the Jets do stuff like this. I haven't talked to Danny about it, but when I look at the New York Jets, I ask myself, okay, you have the right pieces. It's just you wait to see how they're going to screw it up. That's my logic with the Jets. But with the AFC North, we don't know what the hell Cleveland is right now. We just don't. We don't know what Cleveland is. They say they're one thing, they're another thing. Baltimore's still Baltimore until proven otherwise. Pittsburgh, do you remember? So you know what the Patriots, obviously in the last couple of years, they had the 1 year in 2022 when they just missed the playoffs, and then 23 we fell off a cliff. I'm waiting for that fall off a cliff moment to come for the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting. Yep. I am waiting for that moment to happen where just 1-3 turns into 2-7, turns into 3-10. That's what I'm waiting for Pittsburgh. It's just that off the cliff of, oh, we're not contenders. We're bad. We need to blow it up, rip the Band-Aid off. I'm saying the same thing with the Saints right now, even though with Kellen Moore, I don't think that's going to happen. But rebuilding is better than you think. But yeah, with Cincinnati, look, Jamar Chase is probably going to get $40 million. I'm not even kidding when I say that. He's going to get $40 million, and T. Higgins is going to want 30 to 35 million, which I'll say this is the Patriots right now. I don't want to give. If I had to pick two teams for T, I think it's Washington or the Chargers. Two wide receiver needy team. And I know everyone's going to say, oh, they have Scary Terry. Pair McLaurin with someone like that. Let them pay that contract. And with the Chargers, you have a ready-to-go offense. Add Higgins and McConkey together, and you sail off. Meanwhile, going back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Aaron Rodgers stuff and the Jets, I love how he was like, oh, they wanted me to not do a random TV show interview. I know Pat McAfee's not random, but you know what I mean. They want me to do your show every week. Basically where you go on there and you speak your mind, you'll badmouth anyone you want until they get fired. And it wanted him to be a part of the offseason program, which that's not anything bad. They want you to be there to help get this team ready for when September rolls around. That's what the offseason program's for. Those days in April, May, and June with OTAs and mini camp right before training camp, that's what the offseason program's for. So if you're not committed to that, that's on you, dude. So I also think Aaron Rodgers wanted the Jets to say, we don't want you, because he can now go on this, everyone feels bad for me. And I'm the victim here when you're not the victim.
Right.
That's what it is with him, where it's just like he wants to play petty and play the victim. Meanwhile, no one's buying that you're the victim, Aaron. No one's buying it. So we'll see what happens.
Nah, I mean, this guy threw his weight around. He made the Jets bend to his will, essentially. I mean, he got everything he wanted. You got a coach fired. You got all your guys brought in. You basically designed an entire offense to suit, what you wanted. You had all the talent in the world.
Yep.
Teams would – here's what I tell people. If the Jets went 8-9, if the Jets went 9-8, if the
7-10. 7-10.
7-10. Well, I was saying, even if it was as high as 9 wins, you still would look at this season and say this is a disappointment. You would still look at it and say they underdelivered, because when you have Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, how is this not a Super Bowl contender? Look at teams would kill for any of those guys. That's a ridiculous amount of talent, and they weren't just bad. They weren't even close to being mediocre. They were bottom of the barrel the entire time. How are you hopeless in that situation? I don't even know where do you start? You look at last year's he got hurt immediately. Team was a dumpster fire. We're a quarterback away. Wait till 2024. And you see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you look at them too, where it was, okay, they were 2-1. They whooped our ass on Prime Video. Okay, and then they lose a close one to the Broncos in the rain. They go to London, they lose to the Vikings. But all of a sudden, you go from 2-1 to 2-3, and you fire your coach.
Yep.
and then you trade for Adams, and it doesn't really do anything, and you lose to the Jacoby Brissett Patriots because Nathaniel Shearwood gave Drake May a concussion in that game.
Yep.
What are you doing? Like, that's the thing with the Jets where it's like Aaron thought, like, hey, I can come here, I'm going to run the show, I'm going to be the shit. You learned quickly in that game, mess around and find out that, hey, buddy, it's not all it's meant out to be. It's not you're just going to come here and win instantly. The media bought into that. Like when I was hearing, it's like the Bears last year. When I was hearing the Bears where it's like, this team could go to the Super Bowl. I'm like, no, they cannot. And it was the same thing with the Jets. Until the Jets show us that they're a serious team about going to the playoffs, they're going to continue being the laughing stock of the league. I know they had a worse year than on the Patriots, but guess what? We were supposed to be 4-13. We were supposed to be bad.
Right.
The only difference is now we have $120 million in cap room to spend, and our quarterback's really good. And also, I'll say this too with the Patriots and the Jets. Third place schedule has them playing Dallas and Denver. Fourth place, we get the Raiders and the Titans. So, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
You know, that's it. But because that's just how I view it with him, where it was like the whole thing about not being able to do McAfee. I'm like, yeah, because you go on there and you say things that you know should be kept behind closed doors. You know?
Right.
Like I know with WWE, like let the fourth wall go down and they show Gorilla all the time, and I think that's awesome. But for the longest time, it was always what goes on behind the curtain you do not know about. Like I remember the first time they showed it on a live Raw, I was holy crap, this is happening. Also with the wrestling note, death taxes, and I feel like New Orleans is a place where winning streaks just go to die. Is that just me or?
Seems like it, right? Hey, even Taker was in attendance. They showed him. They got some shots of him in the crowd on Sunday.
Boy.
So, yeah, it makes sense. I'm sure that hey, between first three-peat, like not on the Superdome's watch, but at least the lights stayed on the entire time.
Yeah, that's the thing. The lights stayed on the entire time. Look, I know some people were bored with it. We got a good game. We got like halftime show was so weird from not like the show, but the whole thing, like the whole I know who you voted for is like the halftime show. I'm like, okay, that's dumb. But also too, there's a side thing where it was just like this wasn't a halftime show. This wasn't this. I feel like now it's just look, people like it's like everything in life. People are gonna like stuff, people are gonna hate stuff. Let's just see what happens next year in Santa Clara, which I saw someone suggest a halftime show, which I was down for. Because there's a local rock band from the San Francisco Bay Area. Don't know if you've heard of them. I don't know if you heard about them or not. They're older, but they have some good music. And if the NFL really wants to have Metallica come play at halftime of the Super Bowl, I wouldn't mind for that. I know there's people too going like there should be a country halftime show. If that were to ever happen, it's going to be when the NFL goes to Nashville for the Super Bowl, because it is going to happen once Titans Stadium opens. I feel like they'll do kind of like what happened in LA a few years ago, where it was like, hey, we're getting Snoop, we're getting Dre, we're getting Kendrick, we're getting Eminem, we're getting like the superstars of hip hop. They'll do the same in Nashville, where it's just the superstars of country, and it's like the most predictable thing ever. Before we wrap up, though, so I was messaging you about the Stafford thing last night. My only thing with him is just, do you think he'd want to go to a team like the Giants? Where do you think it's more about him wanting to go to New York, or do you think it's more about New York trying something new with a vet instead of, because here's the thing too, where it's like I feel like it's a double-edged sword where it's he goes to New York, you know what, it works out and he's good for a couple of years and you have a succession plan in place. But there's also the bad side where it's, oh yeah, we're getting I don't know how old Matt Stafford is, but we're getting 30 plus. Yeah. We're getting mid-30s Matt Stafford, who will wait and see what happens, and it kind of backfires. More than anything, I think I feel like it's a similar move to kind of like, because I look at it now, and was the Brian Burns trade, like if you could go back in time, would you still? It's like asking, would you still do that trade? Just because I feel like there was other areas to plug with the team. Because look, Giants defense, I think secondary still needs to be fixed. Linebackers, like they're good, but it could be upgraded. D-Long just needs to stay healthy, because I'll be honest with you, I think Lawrence would have been a D-point nominee, if not winner, had he stayed healthy. But the fact that the offensive line crumbled once Andrew Thomas went out for the year, that's a red flag. That's a massive, massive flag, in my opinion, on that football team. Running back, look, I know if people can say the Saquon stuff all day long. Like, look, like even I'll join on for fun. Just like, why not? Like, even I'm like gonna relate something to the Super Bowl title to put Giants and Eagles together. But with Tyrone Tracy, he's fine. Wide receiver, you got Neighbors. You partner Neighbors with someone else, and you kind of see where things go. But more than anything, it's just if they were to that's why I was asking about Stafford, because for me, it more just screams the two, like Shane and Dayball throwing up a Hail Mary to save their jobs, which I feel like it's more just about build for the next 3 years instead of building for the next 1 to 2 years. Kind of like what Vegas is doing with the Pete Carroll hire. Where we know Pete Carroll's not going to be there forever, but it's about building a culture in place so that when Pete's gone, the Raiders are relevant again. I think the Giants need to find that way to stay relevant, but this time for a good reason.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to injecting the team with a little bit of life, with bringing in a Matt Stafford. I think just because we got to get some energy in this building. I think that Giants fans are tired of hearing about this grand plan that's going to foster. That's like, well, there's some foundational pieces here, and we swear that at some point in the future things are going to be good. I think it's like, you got to show us something. You have to show us some competency on the field, because like right now, I look at us like a JV high school team practically. It's like we don't even like this last season was painful. It looked like we weren't even a professional team for the most part. So obviously Stafford, it would be a bit of a Hail Mary to save the job, I think, because if you look at him and Cooper Kupp like a package deal or something, and you bring them in to pair with Malik Neighbors, and I don't know what it's going to cost you in terms of draft capital. If you're able to, with Andrew Thomas back, he is kind of the one guy holding up that offensive line. You're going to have to add some other pieces there. Clearly, you're going to have to make a move for right tackle, and probably get a guard or two in there. But I mean, I'm not entirely against the idea of Stafford being a bridge quarterback. It does reek of desperation, and is it going to get this team to a Super Bowl? Absolutely not. Is it going to get them possibly a fringe wildcard contender? I could see it. And if it's something where, like, let's just say hypothetically, the Giants wind up not going quarterback in the first round. They wind up taking Stafford as a bridge. You wind up with a Jackson Dart in the second round or something, and and all of a sudden there's something there where you're like, oh, like, he's actually picking stuff up. He can take this year, maybe next year as well, to just sit and learn. Hopefully not too long, but if it's something to where like you've got a veteran that's actually good, because remember, Daniel Jones he was under Eli Manning for all of a couple weeks, and the team was in shambles. He didn't have anything to work with. There was no learning curve for Daniel Jones whatsoever. Threw him into the fire. And then he goes through head coach after head coach, system after system, and turns into a disaster. So if you bring in Stafford and it works in the sense that, like, if you're decent and there is something for this young quarterback to pick up over the next year or two, I'm okay with it. If it turns into an Aaron Rodgers Jet situation, I'm not okay with it.
So I don't think it's an Aaron Rodgers Jet situation. I was also looking just at the Giants like cap situation right now, and it's not terrible. Like, I know you guys are 7th in dead cap, but you have $47 million to kick around and spend. So it's not terrible. It's just, I'd almost rather see them plug other holes first, and then instead of, it's like you do something for need more than want. Quarterback is a need, but also I'll say this too. I think Jackson Dart is a first-round quarterback. I'm not here to say that he may be worth the pick, but we always see this happen. Look at Michael Penix last year. He went 8th when people didn't have him going there. People had him like mid to late first round. I will say if they hadn't made it to the national championship, he probably would have been a top 5 pick. Someone would have leapfrogged up to get him. Teams that need quarterbacks will get desperate. That's why drafts like this can really, really dictate where your franchise is going to go. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft that you can either look like a genius or you can look stupid and you're fired in 2 to 3 years or 1. So that's where I say the proceed with caution, where it's like, hey, we're going to do this, oh, we're going to do that. If they're looking more for the project quarterback, I would more lean towards Will Howard in the second round. I know he just won the national championship. Or even I know he's shorter, but Dylan Gabriel as well is another option. I would say Jalen Milroe, but that's just not nice because Jalen Milroe is one of those guys. I just don't know how he's going to translate from college to the NFL because there's a lot of problems with his game in college at Alabama where he was a tree for a lot of it, where it was like, hey, he looks good at doing this, but also he looks bad doing that. So it's like you really have to watch what happens there. That's just my only thing with it. But if number 3, if the Rams call and say like, hey, not for either or, but if it's we'll have Stafford, they want number 3 or they want your second round pick. If they're the Giants, I don't think you do it. I think you can do it if it's a trade package similar to what the Brian Burns deal was. Because with 3, there is so much positional value, which that's the other thing too with contract money as well. I just realized Kayvon Thibodeau's he's getting an extension this offseason. There's a lot of people from that 22 draft class that are going to get paid. Probably Garrett Wilson, him, Bruce Hall, Aiden Hutchinson is going to get an amazing amount of money from the Lions. So that's where I was trying to get it at with you, where I'm like, does Stafford to the Giants make them a playoff team? I don't know, but I do like where you're coming from, where it's more about breathing life into a lifeless organization rather than trying that super move where everyone's going to go, oh my God, they're going to be great, where even if it goes like what happened with Russell in Denver, it doesn't look as bad.
Yeah, I think the goal with a Stafford is like to make the Giants a dark horse team, similar to I think what you saw with the Rams this year. I think that's their ceiling. I think that's a realistic expectation, and I mean, obviously they have the benefit of playing in a division with more opportunity for the top spot. I mean, obviously this team is not going to be ready to challenge the Eagles. They're I mean, obviously the Commanders took a gigantic step forward. But hey, I mean, with these, you got all these wild card spots now. I mean, now you got 7 teams in the playoffs and everything. Like, we see it all the time. I mean, 9-10 wins is usually what the 7 seed comes in at. So if adding a guy like that, considering that you already have a generational talent at wide receiver, and especially if he comes with, Kupp as a package deal. And again, if you're able to, we have a lot of cap room opening up here. And, who knows how the draft is going to go. I think that the idea of returning them to relevancy, I think that, be like, okay, well, we're competitive again. There's something to look forward to. I think that that's kind of the idea, not to make any crazy, big swings like, oh, that we're ready for the ship.
So I'm looking at the top teams for cap right now, and there are some that I look on and I was like, oh wow. Washington is number 3 at 80. The Chargers have 65 million. The Cardinals have 63. The Vikings have 58. The Lions have $55 million to spend. So if you guys were, I don't know where Cleveland is right now at minus 34 million, I'd be a little scared. But where you guys are right now at, $47 million and 10th most in the league, that's not a bad place to be. That's not a bad place to be at all. Tennessee's right there with you guys as well. So there's a difference between like that territory where it's like bad and no money versus bad with money. And then there's me where it's bad with a whole lot of money. Hey, I got to be positive. I got to turn it about my team somehow.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hey, I think that the Patriots, hey, Drake May, I think that obviously this is a team that's got a lot of holes to fill in a roster, but yeah, I think that, you've got something there. I mean, a rookie quarterback that doesn't look like a complete dumpster fire, I mean, is not necessarily the easiest find in the league these days. I think that there were enough bright spots this year to where it's like, okay, well, we got to protect this guy. We got to give him a little bit more to work with. But I think that there is something. It's probably going to take another year or two, but they can get there.
Exactly. That's my whole thing for them is right now, try to be that team that's like, falsely in the hunt around Thanksgiving where it's like, oh, look, there we are. Oh, look, we can still make it, but we got to do all this. And it's like, oh, but they're gone. And then next year, year after is the year where it's like, okay, boys, buckle in and focus because it's time to go. That's what my thing is try to be a winner or in a winning conversation before you have to pay your quarterback. Because once you pay your quarterback, you're in trouble. Like, look at the Niners right now with Brock Purdy.
Yeah. No, I mean, that is the advantage of being ready made, like where those like quarterback away teams and everything like that, when like you've got that window, you get your rookie quarterback, and you've got those 4 or 5 years before you got to really pay the guy. And I mean, that's why, again, I think if the Giants decide not to go this like Stafford route, if they go like the Cam Ward route at number 3, which, I mean, hearing mixed things, but at the end of the day, you got to take your swing when you're a quarterback needy team, right? With the cap room that they have opening up, if they don't make a big trade, if instead they opt to go on a bit of because if they don't swing like a trade like that, I think that the alternative is going to be a spending spree to save the jobs. I mean, this is the time where you fortify when you don't have to pay your quarterback. That is where, that's when you spend and just build around them, right?
That's where I'm getting. That's where I'm glad where the Patriots are right now, where it's what Houston just did last offseason, where it's like, hey, we're going to spend crazy in other spots because we don't have to pay CJ Stroud right now. Because we're going to have to pay CJ Stroud in a couple of years. And when we get there, we're going to be in trouble. It's going to be, hey, we're going to cough up the money now.
Yep.
Meanwhile, with the Giants,
was the idea. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying with the Giants right now, where I feel like if it's we're going on a spending spree to save our jobs, it doesn't usually work. But if it's we're going on a spending spree to help, that's where it gets better. That's where it sounds a lot better, because it's desperate versus trying for longevity. And the Giants, I think, need to be a team that's looked at as they're doing the right thing to be a long-term sustainable franchise. Because if you look at your division, I don't know what the hell's going on with the Dallas Cowboys right now. Washington, I know they got to the NFC Championship game last year, but like I feel like I'm not they're going to take a step back, but I think teams are going to start to not. I'm going to say figure them out, but they're no longer going to be viewed as this. Oh, look, this cute little team. It's hey, you guys almost got to the Super Bowl last year. We want to kill you now. And then you have the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who, you know what, they're going to take their victory lap. They're going to be right there. They'll be fine. But I say that too because they're going to lose free agents. But they're also going to draft someone else, and it's just going to bother the rest of the league, especially you, Jared.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the Eagles are still, how could they not be the team to beat right now? Washington, I do foresee a sophomore slump for Jaden Daniels. I think they're going to get some tape on him. And also, Washington's defense is a sieve. Like, we've seen this, like, over the years. This is just a team that's never been able to figure it out in terms of being able to stop literally anybody. And you saw that in the NFC Championship game and even that game against the Lions as well. I mean, like that really the Commanders won a lot of games shootout style. And until they shore that up, they're just going to kind of be a team that's in a lot of entertaining games. But, in order to really take that step forward, defense wins championships. And I think that they're just going to be another fringe wildcard contender next year. Definitely, there were too many bright spots for me to write them off completely. But I just think that, like, if I'm the Giants, like, that's my competition. Like, that's our kind of barometer of, like, if we're going to try and make the playoffs next year, we have to leapfrog this team. And obviously the Cowboys as well. Cowboys, we don't know what the hell's going on over there. This just looks like a team that is, going like kind of, downhill quickly. Like they've just, ever since they, started shelling out those contracts, right? You pay Dak and it's just like every year you like lose piece by piece. And they're, but then again, they could be, they're closer than we are, I would say. So if Dak comes back healthy and they make some moves in the offseason, who knows? But we obviously have the money to make improvements. So, we'll see how they spend it. I don't really, I'm way far away from making any kind of positive predictions about this team. I'm merely speculating if they were to spend their money wisely.
That's a beautiful thing about this time of the year. I know we don't get to watch NFL football for another 7 months, but you know what? It's that beautiful time of the year we get to talk just random topics, random discussions, and just hypotheticals and what ifs and all that fun stuff. Because you know what? We get to make our minds and our brains up as we have free agency, trades, the combine, the draft come around over the next 8 to 10 weeks.
That we do.
We do. And folks, I'm going to wrap up the podcast right now because if you can't tell by the voice, and like I said earlier, Talking for me has been a little bit of a challenge today because I'm currently battling a cold. And you know what? I still do this because I love football and I love all of you. Next podcast probably won't be until next Tuesday, guys. I already got some stuff lined up. I'm working on some other stuff. You know what, guys? The train will keep on rolling down the tracks. Just a quick heads up. Unfortunately, when free agency does hit, I will be somewhere either in the Cayman Islands or Mexico. So if that does happen, you'll hear about all of it when I get back on vacation because why I deserve a vacation too. But anyway, guys, for Jared Silverclight, the trust fund manager himself, Giant fan talking about the Eagles, I am Griff, 348 in the bag. See you for 349 next week, if not sooner. Have a good night.